Ever tried playing a walking bass line over a modal song only to find yourself repeating what you're playing, sounding really boring, and just putting yourself to sleep? Hi, I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and in this lesson you're going to learn 3 ways you can make your bass lines more beautiful, more melodic, and more exciting over modal songs. Songs like So What or Impressions, without being boring for a single bar. Welcome to Become a Bassist, where it's all about no BS bass lessons designed to get you playing better bass, having more fun, and becoming the best bass player that you can be. And today we're talking all about modal songs, and specifically the kind of modal song that uses very few chords. You know, the songs like Miles Davis' So What or John Coltrane's Impressions. And if you know them, you'll know that it's just long stretches of nothing but D minor and E flat minor. And the quote-unquote correct scales to use over those chords are D Dorian for the D minor 7 and E flat Dorian for the E flat minor 7. Now these modal songs with very few chords, they're very different from songs that have a ton of chords, right? If you've got a lot of chords, in one way it's almost kind of easier to know what to play to get through a walking bass line. If you've got 1 chord per bar, then you're more than likely playing roots pretty much every beat 1 to make sure the chords come through. You might use 2 other chord tones and maybe a scale tone or a chromatic note to fill up the bar. Even some walking bass line formulas work really well when there's 1 chord per bar. In songs with lots of chords, the bar fills up quickly because you're constantly trying to outline the chords. But in modal songs like the ones we're talking about, you've got these big long stretches of a single chord, and you don't really need to outline the chords that much. You can do it in 3 notes. Bam, chord outlined, next chord, let's go. The problem is that there isn't a next chord for a while, so you end up sounding like this. Oh man, not even 4 bars in, and it's already way too repetitive. I'm just putting myself to sleep over here. And even if you know some walking bassline formulas and you kind of mix and match them in, you still end up repeating yourself a bunch. It's so dull. It's like eating unsalted Play-Doh or something. Ugh. The walking bassline formulas, which are super helpful when you first start learning to walk, they become a lot less helpful here. So, how do you make your bass lines interesting, catchy, melodic, exciting, all the stuff that the best bass players do all the time? Let's talk about 3 ways. The first method is, it's almost like cheating, but it absolutely works every time, and that's to transcribe great bass players who have already played these kinds of songs. For example, you can check out their very first recording of So What, one of the most iconic jazz recordings of all time, and just straight up copy Paul Chambers' bass line. The first 4 bars of his walking bass line, he plays this. It's got a nice flow to it. There's a mixture of small steps and some larger leaps around the bass. It's just got so much more life in it than just playing the formulas from before, right? And the best part is that you can learn this and just straight up play it as part of your own walking bass lines. And tons of bass players do this. In fact, check out the first lick in the Paul Chambers line. That one. Have a listen to a Ron Carter bass line from a 1998 recording of So What. It's the very first phrase. It's basically the same as the first part of the Paul Chambers line. Yeah, the only difference is that Ron Carter replaces those first 2 Ds with this kind of triplet figure. Yeah, so he's just going with a little bit of extra flair. Other than that, it's the same, right? But you can transcribe Paul Chambers, Ron Carter, whoever you like. One of my absolute favorites is Christian McBride, and here's what he plays on an old live recording as his first walking phrase. Yeah? Now that version of the song is a little bit faster and very different to the other 2, but I've put the links to all 3 in the description down below. By the way, if you want to check out these walking bass phrases, I've put them all in a PDF you can download by clicking the first link in the description of this video. Just fill out the form on that page, I'll send it straight to you absolutely free, so you can start playing along with these, bass masters and emulate not only the notes that they play, but their time feel and their tone and their touch, everything like that. So just click that link and I'll send it over 100% free, as well as the backing track that I'm using for this video as well. Okay, method one was straight up transcribing bass lines that already exist. Next method, method number two, this one's almost like a game, and the objective of the game is to see how long you can go without playing the root of the chord but still have it make sense. Now, why do this? Why intentionally avoid the root? Well, part of the reason that using those one-bar formulas that we talked about before, the reason they end up sounding boring is because you're always going back to the root every single bar. Root, 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 over and over and over again. Now, playing the root every bar is important if you only have one chord in a bar. But if you have one chord for 16 bars, that becomes a lot less important. And if you're constantly in the habit of, pounding out roots every bar, this can be a kind of tricky habit to break. But here is how. Instead of playing the root on beat 1 of every bar, try to aim for beat 1 of every 2 bars. So you'd have root, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, root, like that, yeah? In between, you can play the notes of the Dorian scale, you can play the notes outside of that, but basically play anything except the root of that D minor chord, that D right there. You might play something like this, 2, 3, 4, root. Root, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, root. Root there. Root. Just like that. See how I'm only playing it on the downbeat of every second bar? This makes the bass line feel more open, more relaxed, right? Less rigid. Now, when you start off, you might end up playing yourself into a corner. That's totally fine. When you start, it's going to take a bit of time to adjust, but when you're there, when you can confidently do the 2-bar phrases without playing the root, you can move on to the next step. Instead of one root every 2 bars, play one root every 4 bars. This gets a bit trickier. It means you have to consciously, play the root, move away from it, do, something, and then find your way back to the root at just the right time. And if you do it right, you might end up with something like this. 2, 3, 4. 1. There's the root there. Here we go. 3, 4, root. Every 4 bars, yeah? 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, root. Yeah? You see how that works? We're going all the way through 4 bars without playing the D, without playing that root at all. Now, when I am doing this, I'll start to kind of think about how to make my way back to the root, maybe like halfway to 3/4 of the way through the phrase, just so it doesn't sneak up on me. Now, one thing that can help keep your bass line grounded, but without having to kind of smash away at the root constantly, is to treat the other notes of the chord as roots. Yeah, treat the other notes of the chords as the root instead of the actual root of the chord, and use them to play on beat 1s of the bars that you're not actually allowed to play the D. So for example, we're playing a D minor chord. I just played a D every 4 bars, but you could treat the other notes of the D minor chord, the F and the A, you treat those as the roots instead. Yeah? And in fact, that's exactly what I was doing in the examples I've been playing. I was playing them on beat 1 and leading into them as much as I could. So I'll do one more and check out what notes I'll play on the beat 1 of every bar. Check this out. 2, 3, and root. 5th. 5th again. 3rd. Root. That's the 4 bars. 5th. 7th, also a part of the chord. 5th, root. 5th, 3rd, 5th. Yeah? Just like that. We're using the other notes of the chord and treating them as roots. I'm pretty sure you see where the next step is taking us, yeah? We did 2 bars, then we did 4 bars. The next step is to do a full 8-bar phrase and only play the root once. Now this is a little bit trickier, but it can be done. Let's give it a shot. 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, root, yeah? Now, 8 bars is a long time. The pull of the root, it gets really strong roughly halfway through the phrase, and you really need to have to kind of ward off the temptation to keep jumping back to the root. Now, was that the most amazing, greatest bass line in the history of walking bass? Definitely not. And I wouldn't recommend you specifically try to avoid the root this much if you're playing with other people. This is just an exercise to get you out of the habit of playing the root every single bar, because in this context, you don't necessarily need to do that. But let's do one more 8-bar phrase real quick. 2, 3, and root. 4 bars. 8. Just like that. We had a whole 8 bars, only played the root once. Now, if you wanted to take this idea to the extreme, you could do that by, instead of playing an 8-bar phrase, try playing a 12 or 16-bar phrase without playing the root. Now this becomes incredibly difficult to retain the kind of D minor sound without actually using the D, right? But if you do get to the 8-bar phrase without using the D once, then you're nailing it. Stretch for 12, then stretch for 16. You can use the backing track from this video by clicking the link in the description, and if you need, it'll give you a ton of time to practice. It's just D minor for days. So we had transcribing other bass players, we had avoiding the root. Now the final method I want to show you today is using little riffs and kind of catchy melodies as part of your bass lines. Things like this. 2, 3, and... just like that. Now obviously you're trying to play a walking line, so these aren't something that you can play for an entire song, but sprinkling them in here and there, that's a great way to make your bass lines more memorable, and it'll also give whoever you're playing with new ideas to work with, right? They can kind of bounce off what you're playing, and it kind of creates, a musical conversation, which is really, really cool. By the way, that little idea, that's a real thing. That's a Paul Chambers thing. It happens at the 2:28 mark of the original recording of So What. So that one's almost like a combination noodle. We're transcribing and using catchy riffs, right? Now there's no particular formula for these. You can be as creative as you want. For example, one idea that Ron Carter uses all the time is this one. Yeah? So he's playing the root, going up to the 2, down to the 5, back up to the 2. Super simple, but it works really well. One little variation of that is doing this. Yeah, adding in a little chromatic note. Da, 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 and doing that a couple of times. It gives a bit of extra color and again works really, really well. If you can combine these 3 ideas, copying existing bass lines that already work really well, practicing playing longer phrases without, smashing the root all the time, and sprinkling in these catchy melodies and riffs into your walking, then your bass lines will absolutely never be boring or dull. In fact, they're going to be teeming with life, like a little, petri dish of jazz. You'll have these melodic ideas that'll catch people's ears, and you'll actually start to be part of the music instead of just, hacking away at formulas, just trying to make it through. The trick, though, is to practice all of these things. So if you want the practice track that I've been using in this video, as well as the walking phrases from Paul Chambers, Ron Carter, and Christian McBride in both tab and notation form, then I would love to give them all to you absolutely free. Just click right here, fill out the form on that page, and I'll gladly send you everything you need to practice to make sure your walking lines stay fresh, interesting, and make sure you never put your audience to sleep with your bass lines ever again. So I'll see you in there.